Emma Turner was a young maid known for her dedication and care. Life had not been kind to her, but Emma faced each day with a smile on her face and a heart full of hope. She worked at the imposing Whitmore mansion, where she took care of George Whitmore, an elderly man whose health was rapidly deteriorating. Despite the smell of disinfectant and medicines that filled the room, Emma kept the environment as comfortable as possible for her employer. George Whitmore, a man with a stern appearance but with a deep and emotional gaze, trusted Emma completely. He knew that his last days were near, and many times her presence was his only solace. On a sunny afternoon, as the rays of the sun penetrated the mansion's windows, George called Emma for a conversation. "Emma, come here," George said in a weak but firm voice. "I need to tell you something important." Emma approached the bed, holding George's hand gently. "Of course, Mr. Whitmore. What do you want to tell me?" Emma responded with a mix of curiosity and concern. George took a deep breath, as if gathering all his strength to speak. "My family, Emma, is only interested in my inheritance. My nephew, Richard, he's the worst of them all, greedy and unscrupulous," George revealed with a heavy sigh. "But I have a secret that can change your life." Emma's eyes widened, surprised by the revelation. George noticed her reaction and lightly squeezed her hand. "There's a safe hidden in my office. Inside it, you will find something that will change everything. You must find it, Emma. Promise me you will find it," George said with an urgency in his voice that Emma had never heard before. "I promise, Mr. Whitmore," Emma replied, feeling the seriousness of the situation. Meanwhile, Richard Whitmore, George's ambitious and calculating nephew, roamed the mansion's corridors. He suspected that his uncle was up to something, especially since Emma's visits to George's room were becoming more frequent. Richard, with his shrewd gaze and cynical smile, began to observe Emma more closely, trying to catch any sign of a well-kept secret. On a silent night, George felt his time was running out, called Emma to his room again, and with the little strength he had left, made one last request. "Emma, you need to be quick. Go to my office, find the safe, and open it. You will understand everything when you find it," George said, voice barely audible. Emma nodded, tears in her eyes. She knew that this was probably the last time she would hear George's voice. The next day, the mansion was enveloped in an even deeper silence. George Whitmore had passed away during the night. The news of George's death spread quickly through the mansion. As preparations for the funeral were made, Emma felt the weight of the promise she had made. She knew she needed to fulfill George's last wish, but she also knew that Richard was watching her every move. Emma waited for the right moment and, under the cover of night, went to George's office. The room was dark, illuminated only by the moonlight coming through the window. She searched every corner, looking for the safe George had mentioned. After some time, her hands found a small hidden door in the wall behind an old painting. With a racing heart, Emma opened the door, revealing the hidden safe. She knew this was only the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. The promise she had made to George echoed in her mind as she prepared to face the challenges ahead. George Whitmore, the old millionaire, passed away peacefully during the night in his mansion. The next morning, the house was eerily silent, reflecting the loss. His face, once stern, now seemed finally at peace. The news of his death spread quickly among the staff and family, bringing sadness and tension, especially to those who knew the secret he had shared with Emma Turner, the young maid he trusted so much. Emma Turner, still shaken by George Whitmore's recent death, sat in the late man's office. The room, filled with memories and old objects, seemed to carry the weight of decades of untold stories. Determined to honor George's last wish, Emma searched for the safe he had mentioned. After hours of meticulous searching, Emma finally found the safe hidden behind a bookshelf. Her hands trembled as she turned the dial, trying to decipher the combination George had mentioned in one of their last conversations. With a soft click, the safe opened, revealing an old diary and a mysterious key. Emma carefully picked up the diary, feeling the aged leather under her fingers. Opening the first page, she saw George's familiar handwriting, firm and elegant. He had started writing the diary when he was young, recounting his adventures, loves, and challenges over the years. As she flipped through the yellowed pages, Emma discovered the story of a great love from George's past. Her name was Eleanor, George wrote, and she was the most enchanting woman I ever met. I promised her that one day we would meet again. Life has its own ways of separating souls. Emma felt a pang of sadness reading about George's unfulfilled promise. Reaching the last pages of the diary, Emma found a surprising revelation. George mentioned a key that would open a bank vault containing important documents and a secret fortune. The young woman looked at the key beside the diary, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. However, Richard Whitmore, George's greedy nephew, was not far away. He had noticed Emma's prolonged absence and began to suspect that she was involved in something significant. Suspicious, Richard decided to follow her discreetly. Emma decided she needed to go to the bank immediately. She knew time was of the essence, and that Richard might try to stop her. As she prepared to leave, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Richard appeared at the door, his look full of suspicion. "Emma, what are you doing here?" Richard asked, trying to sound casual but failing to hide his curiosity. "Just cleaning Mr. Whitmore's office," Emma replied, trying to stay calm. "It looks like you found something interesting," Richard said, his eyes fixed on the key Emma was holding. "That's none of your business, Richard," Emma said, trying to pass by him. Richard grabbed her arm tightly, preventing her from moving forward. "Tell me what you found, Emma. I know my uncle left something important for you." Emma looked into Richard's eyes, feeling determination grow within her. "George trusted me, Richard. I will not betray that trust." With a quick movement, Emma managed to break free from Richard's grip and ran toward the door. She knew she needed to be quick and smart to reach the bank before Richard caught up with her again. On arriving at the bank, Emma presented the key to the manager, who led her to a private room. With trembling hands, she opened the vault and found a folder full of documents and a letter addressed to her. The letter, written by George, revealed a truth that Emma could never have imagined. "Dear Emma, if you are reading this letter, it means you have finally discovered the truth. You are my daughter, result of my great love with Eleanor. Could never be present in your life, but I always watched from afar, proud of the woman you have become." Emma felt a wave of emotions wash over her. Shock, joy, sadness, and a sense of completeness. She finally understood the depth of the connection she had always felt with George. Meanwhile, Richard, furious at being deceived, began plotting how he could seize the fortune he knew was at stake. He would not allow Emma, a mere maid, to inherit what he believed was rightfully his. Aware of the danger she faced, Emma decided she needed to act quickly. She not only had to protect her legacy but also her own life. Determined to honor George's memory and the promise he had made, Emma was ready to face any challenge that came her way. Reaching the last pages of the diary, Emma found a surprising revelation. George mentioned a key that would open a bank vault containing important documents and a secret fortune. The young woman looked at the key beside the diary, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. However, Richard Whitmore, George's greedy nephew, was not far away. He had noticed Emma's prolonged absence and began to suspect that she was involved in something significant. Suspicious, Richard decided to follow her discreetly. Emma decided she needed to go to the bank immediately. She knew time was of the essence, and that Richard might try to stop her. As she prepared to leave, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Richard appeared at the door, his look full of suspicion. "Emma, what are you doing here?" Richard asked, trying to sound casual but failing to hide his curiosity. "Just cleaning Mr. Whitmore's office," Emma replied, trying to stay calm. "It looks like you found something interesting," Richard said, his eyes fixed on the key Emma was holding. "That's none of your business, Richard," Emma said, trying to pass by him. Richard grabbed her arm tightly, preventing her from moving forward. "Tell me what you found, Emma. I know my uncle left something important for you." Emma looked into Richard's eyes, feeling determination grow within her. "George trusted me, Richard. I will not betray that trust." With a quick movement, Emma managed to break free from Richard's grip and ran toward the door. She knew she needed to be quick and smart to reach the bank before Richard caught up with her again. On arriving at the bank, Emma presented the key to the manager, who led her to a private room. With trembling hands, she opened the vault and found a folder full of documents and a letter addressed to her. The letter, written by George, revealed a truth that Emma could never have imagined. Dear Emma, if you are reading this letter, it means you have finally discovered the truth. You are my daughter, result of my great love with Eleanor. Could never be present in your life, but I always watched from afar, proud of the woman you have become. Emma felt a wave of emotions wash over her. Shock, joy, sadness, and a sense of completeness. She finally understood the depth of the connection she had always felt with George. Meanwhile, Richard, furious at being deceived, began plotting how he could seize the fortune he knew was at stake. He would not allow Emma, a mere maid, to inherit what he believed was rightfully his. Aware of the danger she faced, Emma decided she needed to act quickly. She not only had to protect her legacy but also her own life. Determined to honor George's memory and the promise he had made, Emma was ready to face any challenge that came her way. Emma was determined to follow George's instructions, even knowing that Richard was on her trail. She took a deep breath, looking around to ensure she was not being followed, before entering the bank. The vault awaited, and within it, promise of answers and perhaps a new direction for her life. Upon opening the vault, Emma found a stack of meticulously organized documents and a letter with her name written in George's firm handwriting. Her hands trembled as she opened the letter, both anxious and fearful. Dear Emma, if you are reading this letter, it means I am no longer among you. There is something I need to confess, something I kept secret all my life. You are my daughter. Your mother, Eleanor, was the great love of my life, but we could never be together due to the circumstances of the time. She made me promise to care for you, even from afar, and I fulfilled that promise as best as I could. The documents in this vault are proof of your lineage and your rightful claim to my fortune. Use it wisely, my dear, and remember, you are always loved. With all my love. Emma let the letter fall to the ground as tears streamed down her face. She had always felt a special connection with George, but had never imagined he was her father. The revelation left her stunned and confused, but also gave her a sense of belonging she had never felt before. As she organized the documents, Emma heard a sound coming from the bank's hallway. She quickly put everything back into the vault and left before Richard could catch up with her. However, she knew he would not give up so easily. Back at her home, Emma began to investigate more about her mother and the relationship she had with George. She found old photos and hidden letters in her mother's house, confirming George's story. Determined to get all the answers, she confronted her mother that night. "Mom, why did you never tell me about George?" Emma asked, holding one of George's love letters. Anna sighed deeply before responding. "I wanted to protect you, Emma. George and I loved each other, but our families and society would never accept our union. When I found out I was pregnant, he promised he would take care of us from a distance. And he kept that promise." Emma felt torn between anger and understanding. "I deserved to know, Mom. I had the right to know my father." Anna nodded, tears in her eyes. "I know, my dear. I'm so sorry, but now you know the truth, and that's what matters." Meanwhile, Richard was furious. He had discovered the existence of the bank vault and knew that Emma had found something valuable. His eyes gleamed with greed as he planned to take possession of the fortune he believed was rightfully his. He bribed bank employees but couldn't gain access to Emma's vault. Desperate, he began following Emma's every move, hoping to find a loophole. Emma, aware of the danger surrounding her, decided to act quickly. He hired a lawyer to ensure her inheritance was legally protected. "I won't let Richard take what's rightfully mine," she told the lawyer, determination in her eyes. The lawyer, an experienced and trustworthy man, nodded. "We'll make sure everything is done according to the law, Emma. You have the legitimate right to this inheritance." Days later, while Emma was away, Richard broke into her house and stole the documents she had obtained from the vault. Returning to find the theft, Emma felt a wave of despair, quickly composed herself. She knew she couldn't give up. Emma began investigating more deeply and found a new lead that could expose Richard. She discovered that he was involved in illegal activities and decided to use this information against him. "He thinks he can intimidate me. He's very mistaken," she murmured to herself, determined to fight for what was rightfully hers. The battle was just beginning, but Emma was ready to face any obstacle in her way. She knew that to honor George's memory and protect his legacy, she needed to be stronger than ever. Emma was determined to find a way to expose Richard and protect the legacy Father George had left. After days of meticulous investigation, she finally discovered that Richard was involved in illegal activities, including money laundering and corporate fraud. With this information in hand, she knew she had the weapon necessary to defeat her ambitious cousin. One morning, Emma decided to seek out a respected lawyer, known for his integrity and skill in complex cases. The lawyer, Dr. Henry Almeida, listened attentively to her story and analyzed the evidence she had gathered. "Emma, this information is incriminating. With this, we can not only ensure that you obtain your rightful inheritance, but also put Richard behind bars," said Dr. Henry with a serious but hopeful expression. "I'm willing to go all the way, Dr. Henry. I need to ensure my father's will is fulfilled and that Richard pays for his crimes," Emma replied, determined. With Dr. Henry's help, Emma prepared a comprehensive dossier with all the evidence against Richard. They scheduled a court hearing to present the case and officially claim George's inheritance. During the hearing, Emma and her lawyer detailed all of Richard's illegal activities and presented the evidence that Emma was George's legitimate daughter. "Your Honor, here are the documents proving George Whitmore's paternity and Richard Whitmore's connection to various criminal activities," argued Dr. Henry, as he handed the papers to the judge. Richard, visibly nervous, tried to defend himself, but the evidence was irrefutable. The judge, after reviewing all the evidence, pronounced his sentence. "In light of the evidence presented, I declare that Emma Turner is the legitimate heir of George Whitmore. As for Richard Whitmore, he will be brought to trial for fraud, attempted theft, and other illegal activities," the judge decreed, striking the gavel. Richard was immediately taken into custody by the court officers. Emma felt a tremendous weight lift from her shoulders. Finally, justice was being served. With the documents recovered and her inheritance legally secured, Emma decided it was time to reconcile with her mother. They met at a cozy cafe in the city center. The place had a simple charm, with wooden tables and soft lighting. The two sat down and Emma held her mother's hand tenderly. "Mom, I know you kept many secrets to protect me, but now everything is clear. I forgive you, and I want us to go through this together," Emma said, voice firm but sweet. Anna Turner, with tears in her eyes, smiled at her daughter. "Emma, I always wanted to tell you, but I was afraid of the consequence." "I am so proud of you," her mother responded, her voice choked with emotion. The story of George Whitmore and Anna, Emma's mother, was marked by insurmountable social barriers and a family willing to do anything to keep their traditions and fortune intact. The Whitmore family was one of the oldest and most respected in the town, known for their industrial empire built over generations. Every family member carried a legacy of power and prestige. Any threat to that inheritance was viewed with extreme suspicion and hostility. The Whitmores were an aristocratic family, deeply rooted in the social and economic elite of the region. The patriarch, Henry Whitmore, was a ruthless and authoritarian man, known for his ability to manipulate people and situations to favor the family's interests. His wife, Margaret Whitmore, shared the same elitist view, firmly believing in the purity of blood and maintaining appearances. Together, they shaped their children and grandchildren to be guardians of this legacy, educating them in private schools and encouraging them to marry only within their social circle. When George fell in love with Anna, a young woman of humble origins who worked in the mansion as a maid, the couple faced fierce opposition. Henry and Margaret considered any relationship outside their social class a direct threat to the Whitmore name. Fearing scandals and loss of status, they used every means to separate George and Anna. Henry, with his influential contacts, threatened Anna with reprisals, and Margaret spread rumors to discredit the young woman. They also hired private detectives to monitor Anna's every move, intimidating her at every turn. As she investigated her mother's past and relationship with George, Emma found a series of hidden evidence in her mother's old house. There were love letters between George and Anna, some explicitly mentioning the threats made by the Whitmore family. Additionally, Emma discovered diaries and bank records that revealed suspicious payments made to people who later testified against Anna, falsely accusing her of theft and misconduct. Among the documents, Emma also found contracts and property records in the names of third parties that actually belonged to the Whitmores, used to conceal the true extent of their wealth and evade taxes. These discoveries not only confirmed the persecution her mother had faced, but also indicated a network of corruption and fraud maintained by the family over the years. With this evidence in hand, Emma and her lawyer, Dr. Henry Almeida, took the case to the authorities. The investigation deepened, revealing a vast scheme of financial crimes committed by the Whitmore family. Several family members, including the patriarch Henry and his eldest son, Richard, were involved in money laundering, tax evasion, and bribery of officials. The media quickly picked up the story, turning the scandal into a matter of public interest. The Whitmores, once untouchable and respected, were now under constant scrutiny. The family's properties were searched, bank accounts were frozen, and several family members were summoned to testify. The revelation of these crimes not only brought justice for Anna and Emma, but also initiated a transformation in the local society. The downfall of the Whitmores served as a warning to the powerful about the dangers of abusing their power. Emma, strengthened by her discoveries and the memory of her father, continued to work tirelessly to ensure that the truth prevailed and that those responsible were properly punished. With George's inheritance, Emma decided to do something that honored her father's memory and helped others. She founded the George Whitmore Foundation, a charitable organization dedicated to supporting young people from underprivileged communities by providing education, food, and job opportunities. At the foundation's inauguration, Emma gave an emotional speech to those present. "This foundation is a tribute to my father, George Whitmore, who taught me the importance of helping others. I promise to continue his legacy of generosity and compassion, providing a better future for those in need," Emma declared, with a determined sparkle in her eyes. From that moment on, Emma found peace and fulfillment in her new life, knowing she was fulfilling George's last promise. She had overcome all the challenges life had thrown at her and transformed her destiny, becoming a true inspiration to everyone around her.